And we are on the Mark Hoke Show. Very excited as we have a super special guest joining us today from ESPN. Arda Ocal is on the line with us. And Arda, welcome to the Mark Hoke Show. Very happy to have you joining us today.
Mark, thanks for having me. I know it's Thanksgiving week. We're both up against it, trying to get ready for the Thanksgiving festivities, but glad to be here to talk some pro wrestling.
Absolutely. We're going to have a great time talking about it. As you guys at ESPN probably did one of the most thankless tasks you could do, making a list, which is which, which is always opening yourselves up for criticism and comments that the people just go crazy on. But you guys did a terrific column here with the 30 best pro wrestlers under 30. And it was certainly, I think, a high attention getting list. Before we get into where you ranked everybody, give us an idea of what you and the team put into this list in terms of criteria and what you were looking for when you ranked everybody up.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'll talk about it from my vantage point. First of all, shout out to our ESPN team, particularly that cover combat sports. People like Marcus Vanderberg and Andreas Hale and Mike Coppinger, and we have a really great team of writers and editors and people who oversee the vertical that allow us the creativity to be able to put lists together like this. And let's be honest, whether it's ESPN or elsewhere, lists are meant to be debated and parsed, right? Like, I have a lifetime of interacting with, certainly in my younger years, being a passionate pro wrestling fan, where it was, in many years of my life, it was the biggest thing to me, right? So I understand completely when a pro wrestling fan reads a list and they don't agree with something, the vitriol that they might feel or the opposition that they feel the need to say online and have a platform to do so with social media. So I would never begrudge those people ever, because at the end of the day, just like any pro wrestler will tell you, it doesn't matter whether they love you or hate you. It matters if they're talking about you. The
Right.
worst thing that can happen to a pro wrestler is if people are indifferent and they're not paying attention, because it's the attention currency, right? It's the attention game. So putting together this list, certainly the biggest factor is they have to be under 30 years of age. So that's the biggest one, right? But beyond that, I mean, any factors that you would consider, right? Marketability, star power, in-ring acumen, character, history. How did they do? Actually, even more than history, like, how did they do this particular year or fiscal year as compared to last year's list, right? And so I know a lot of people were debating the number one pick. Last year it was MJF. This year it was Dominic Mysterio, and a lot of people were debating whether Dominic, in their minds, deserved the number one pick. I absolutely believe he does. I think he, on many nights, is the best pro wrestler in the world in all categories. And that's the thing. Like, pro wrestling fans will adjudicate pro wrestlers or judge pro wrestlers in their mind or rank them based on what they hold dear. There are a lot of pro wrestling fans that hold in-ring work rate in the highest regard. Others hold character work in the highest regard. Others hold drawing ability in the highest regard, right? So that's something to keep in mind when all of these people are debating online. You have to understand what matters to them most, because oftentimes it's different things.
So let's run down that top 10 for anybody that may not have seen the column. So it went Dominic Mysterio, MJF, Tony Storm, Rhea Ripley, Mariah May, Kensuke Takeshita, Jack Perry, Kyle Fletcher, Daniel Garcia, and Shota Amino, excuse me. I mean, I don't know how you really, you're splitting hairs with a lot of these people in terms of where you're putting
Sure.
them. But in terms of, let's talk about Dominic first. What made you feel that Dominic was number one? And it sounds like, without a question, you felt like he was number one.
Yeah, so first of all, I apologize for people watching this right now. My camera is like flickering between. I don't know what's happening right now. I think it is possessed. It's still in Halloween mode, so I apologize to everybody
It's
for
kind of
that.
like it's
But
kind of like the Truman Show. It's okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna have to knock on a wall when I get there with my boat. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is by committee, of course. One person did not determine this list, right? Like this is a committee of the ESPN panel that is putting this together, and after which, well, actually, we were assigned the people to write about before we even knew their. I didn't know Tony Storm, for example, was going to be number 3 when I wrote my blurb about Tony Storm. So I was assigned my wrestlers to write about, not knowing exactly where they might end up on the list. So, we give our input, but at the end of the day, the list is put together. If you're asking me why I believe Dominic Mysterio is the number 1, I mean, look, you could split hairs between him and MJF. I believe that MJF is gonna be continue to be ultra successful in pro wrestling. I think he's gonna make millions of dollars. I think he's going to be a main event player wherever he is. If he stays in AEW for the rest of his career, he'll be a main event guy as long as he wants to be. If he decides to go to WWE one day, he could be a main event guy and have a long title reign there as well. Like I just see a lot in that guy. And I think that MJF and Dominic Mysterio have a lot in common. I think that the biggest thing they have in common is the fact that they essentially stay in character, like they are the last like it's funny to watch The Undertaker, right? Like The Undertaker for a very long time was the standard for keeping kayfabe with your character, right? Like would never break character, would always be the Undertaker, even at the airport as much as in the ring, right? But it feels like Dominic Mysterio and MJF are cut from that cloth. The way that they respect the character, portray the character, live the character. And to me, even if in certain instances it is them to the volume turned up, which is how we've always heard, wrestlers like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin be successful. It's just them with the volume dialed up to 11, right? If that's the case with both of them, it's easier to portray a character like that. But the fact that they are cool as characters without feeling the need to be cool, especially as heels. And that's something that it's not a new problem. It's always been something that's discussed. The idea that the heel feels, when portraying a heel, you feel a need to be cool as opposed to drawing heat. And I think that Dom and MJF have done a terrific job, especially so early in their careers, of generating large amounts of heat and drawing interest from a pro wrestling audience in their matches and storylines.
And as we go down through the list, uh, very representative organizations all over the world, and I think great representation for the ladies too. Because if you look at the list, I mean, ton of women up there, a bunch in the top 5. I mean, that's pretty sensational when you think about that. With with the women that they are being that successful. I don't know if we'd have been able to say that 15, 20 years ago. I mean, you couldn't imagine a list like this with 3 of the top 5 being female.
But I would also say that's a product of the time and how women were booked, and the, the parody was certainly not on display in yesteryear, and I don't see it as a shock at all. Like on I know I said this about Dom, but on many nights, Tony Storm and or Rhea Ripley have been the best pro wrestlers on the planet in their matches. Like they own weeks, they own months, and but the paradigm has changed for the better, and rightfully so. Like that doesn't seem out of the ordinary anymore. It's just Rhea Ripley is a fantastic pro wrestler. Tony Storm is a fantastic pro wrestler character. Like it doesn't feel like it's a conversation about anything other than their work in the ring or their work behind a microphone. And Tony Storm falls in the same category as MJF and Dominic Mysterio. Like, what impresses me about Tony Storm is there's a select few wrestlers. Cody Rhodes is one. Drew McIntyre is one that find a high level of success in a post WWE world, right? Cody Rhodes is disenfranchised with Stardust, leaves WWE, makes himself into a dynamite main event guy, comes back to WWE and is now QB1 as he says in his bio, but also he is, right? He's the next John Cena. He's the one that's going to fulfill all the appearances. He'll maybe one day break the record for most Make-A-Wish grants. You could see Cody Rhodes being that guy, and he reinvented himself after leaving WWE in a situation he wasn't happy with. Same with Drew McIntyre, and same with Tony Storm. Like Tony Storm has done a fantastic job. To me, some of the best diamonds in the rough in pro wrestling come from abrupt, unexpected left turns in characters. And timeless Tony Storm, in many of her promos, and also in a lot of the post game or the post show press conferences, has
Yeah.
been an
Tell
absolute
me.
breath of fresh air. Like,
Tell me
just
about it.
my goodness, like just it's gold. It's a gold mine for someone like Tony Storm, who's an absolute creative.
What are the uh most controversial decisions that you guys had on this list? Per maybe per fan feedback, what have you heard that, if when you hear comments get made that they, well, maybe we could have gone in that direction. Okay, I see that point. Where have you guys been getting hit the hardest on it?
The comments that I've seen, two come to mind. Austin Theory is number one. Actually, no. Logan Paul is number one. His placement, so he is number 22, and I see two camps, and like he got a lot of comments from what I've seen. This is from my cursory research on social media. A lot of people think he should have been higher. A lot of people thought he shouldn't have been on the list at all. I personally think if you were asking me and this was my personal list, he'd be top 10. I think he has done so much for WWE. WWE has done so much for him. He has shined in a way that he has no reason or no business shining in the amount of matches that he's had, in the amount of time that he's been in the ring. Like, he could have a main event match. He's had main event matches so early in his career, and he looks natural in there, and he just gets it. Like, him selfieing a video of himself frog splashing from the top turnbuckle into a table, like, that's brilliant stuff that pushes the boundaries. We haven't seen that kind of stuff before often from, previously, but Logan Paul not only can get away with it, but also excels in doing it. So my opinion is that he's absolutely a credit to WWE and to pro wrestling, and he's gravitated to it like Kurt Angle-esque, really. Like, I'm not saying Kurt Angle is arguably the greatest pro wrestler of all time in the ring. Like, he's in that conversation, right? I'm not saying Logan Paul is. I'm saying Kurt Angle is also known as somebody that picked up pro wrestling extremely fast, right? Like, we often talk about Kurt Angle and his career and how quickly he adapted to pro wrestling. Logan Paul has that similar trait, is what I'm saying. He picked up pro wrestling particularly quickly, and he's been dynamite. And so at 22, little low for me personally, but that was a big one. Austin Theory, another guy who I really think, maybe with different storylines, booking, etc., will absolutely shine. I listened to my buddy, fellow Canadian Chris Van Vliet, did an interview with him recently, and I just left that thinking how humble and how much of the right attitude Austin Theory has outside of the ring. And so that just particularly impressed me. With no matter what has been thrown his way, he's just made the best out of it, made chicken salad out of chicken, you know what? So I, yeah, I mean, Austin Theory, I understand why where is he on the list? He's pretty low. Where is he? Number 15. So he's right in the
Yeah.
middle of the list. Could he, I mean, for in-ring presence and being a total package outside of booking, He's a top 10 guy for me for sure. But I mean, I'm not mad at it per se, but I think that we'll look back. Let me put it this way. I think we'll look back on this list in 5 years and say, wow, like look at Austin Theory now.
Yeah, it's a fascinating list when you start going through it and you think about the future of pro wrestling, and this is the group that's gonna be carrying the industry in the next 10 years, and there's so much talent on this list. A lot of times you'll see a list like this, and you start getting down into 14, 15, and so on, and you're like, "Oh, okay, they're these guys, right?" I mean, this list from top to bottom is so exciting to look at because you just think about it and say, "My god, we're gonna have some terrific pro wrestling for the next decade because of people like this."
I think we have an abundance of riches. Like, I mean, I thought we had a really good talent core when I was doing independence in Ontario, Canada in like 2005 and until like what 2012. Like we had a great flow of talent, whether it was local talent or even talent that we were able to use at TNA at the time, like they were looking for independent bookings and they would come in. We'd get guys like the Motor City Machine Guns who are now like, what a story they are. Like I remember working with Chris Sabin for random bookings in 2006, and now him and Alex Shelley are in WWE, which is amazing. Like I'm so happy for them because that was a long road to get to a place like that. So, but the talent, to your point, especially the younger talent, and the way that the recruitment and the development system is, it's never been better for not only somebody who has the genetics, the size, the strength, the speed, but also the desire to be a pro wrestler, from the ID program to the thriving promotions that have a lot of backing and spotlight behind them, to the development, if you're looking at WWE, at the Performance Center, AEW, Impact, the GCW, Japan, Mexico. Like there's these territories certainly existed, but like it's never been more clear how to make a livable wage as a pro wrestler and develop as a pro wrestler than perhaps ever, based on my observation of how independent wrestlers are getting noticed, or athletes from other realms are getting noticed and trying pro wrestling. So that it's not a new story, but I feel like the formula is as advanced as it's ever been.
And we're on the Mark Hoke Show with Arda Ocal from ESPN, and to go on that point a little bit, I've been watching pro wrestling since about 1982, and I have never seen the industry in such an incredible place right now. I just love turning on the TV and seeing what's going on in WWE, AEW, TNA, and other organizations. MLW is going to be taking a step up here soon, and all the great indie promotions right down to like what we have here in Las Vegas with FSW. It is a stunning time that I never thought we'd see.
Absolutely. And as somebody who worked in the independents for a very long time, support your local indies. Even if they don't bring people that you recognize, go and support them. They have a dream. They're chasing that dream. It's a very arduous, long, difficult road, and you're there in the ground up. It's like watching an indie band that finally gets signed by a label. Like there's no better feeling than being a fan and watching someone's journey from day one. I have several examples of that I've seen them from their first match in Toronto to now they're in WWE and thriving. So that warms my heart to see, because I know how difficult that journey is, and I've been on those roads, logging those miles with those wrestlers. So I know exactly the sacrifices they have to make, and I wasn't taking bumps. They were putting bumps on their bump cards. So it's infinitely more arduous and difficult doing that journey than it is talking behind a microphone, which I'm very blessed to do. But to your point, the idea, like the other thing that I see often on social media is this tribalism of WWE versus AEW, or
Mhm.
people that only like Japan, or people that only like Mexico, or people that only like a certain promotion. Pro wrestling is pro wrestling. I'm not saying we all have to get along, but to me, I guess the way that I look at it is, I remember the days where there was really only one promotion where you could make a good living, and that was WWE. And in the second biggest promotion at the time, those wrestlers were still hungrily looking for independent bookings because they needed to supplement their income. And there are still those kinds of cases today, but AEW has certainly provided an alternative where wrestlers can make a good living plying their craft. And we can never begrudge that. The more places there are, the more spots available for wrestlers to work and to be creative and to put on a great show for fans. To me, that's a win. So I will never be like, oh, like this stinks, that whatever. It's more, I appreciate that because I remember a whole different landscape back in the day when I was in the thick of it. And that was far less fun than wrestlers having the opportunity to find jobs elsewhere. So
I gotta tell you, this is the first time we've got to talk, and the love that you have for pro wrestling is just oozing out of you right now. It really is. I can tell the passion that you've got for this because you've been involved in so many other things, and with ESPN, the NHL, video gaming, the whole gamut. But man, I can just feel the love of the game, man.
look, I'm very happy in my life. Like, I get to do a lot of amazing things with ESPN. And, I hosted Sports Center yesterday, and I am in the mix with the NHL and ESPN, which is exactly where I want to be. I grew up a hockey fan. It's my first love. And to be able to host Sports Center, it's a television institution. I am absolutely blessed. I grew up loving two things the most in life: hockey and pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling. When I joined WWE, it was a dream come true. I had several dreams, and that was one of them, and it came true. And honestly, when I left WWE, it kind of closed the chapter for me, and I felt at peace. And I said, I think I need to take a break from pro wrestling for a while. And it's been nice to be able to dip my toe back into the pro wrestling realm, whether it's WWE bringing me back for talking head segments on documentaries, or ESPN allowing me to write articles about WWE and do certain fun projects. I That's enough for me. Like, I'm very happy with my contribution to the pro wrestling space. And friends that are in the business still send me their matches every now and then, and I'm happy to watch them and you know give notes as needed or whatever. But really, like, from a contribution standpoint, I'm happy. Like, life is good.
So, what is some of the craziest stuff you've ever covered? Because I know you've done so many things. I mean, I was looking down over your history, and I almost feel like you could have done the wide world of sports back in the 70s and just walked in and done just about anything and had fun with it. What's some of the more entertaining things that you've had to do?
I mean, I've done a lot. Like a lot of my time at ESPN was actually spent in esports and gaming. Believe it or not, like, I got hired full time in 2019, and it was to do MLS soccer, sports betting, and esports. And I barely do
Wow.
any of that now. Like, yeah, like, ESPN is the kind of place where you just say yes to everything, and I just move with the currents, man. Like, SportsCenter presented itself as an opportunity in 2021. I jumped at the chance. The NHL returned to ESPN after a long hiatus. I raised my hand. Like, I've been very blessed and lucky to be in the right places at the right times to be able to raise my hand to get these kinds of opportunities. And I'm, like I said, I'm so happy, like, doing hockey as my anchor and doing Sports Centers, being in the mix there, but then also having the freedom to be able to do these kinds of things like pro wrestling. Like, the old adage is essentially, once pro wrestling is in your blood, it never really leaves, right? You may leave pro wrestling, but it'll always pull you back in somehow, some way.
Mhm.
So I'm lucky in the sense that I have this kind of outlet to be able to scratch that itch, you know? So if you were asking me though, like what is my most in like what do I find the most interesting in pro wrestling? I'm happy to contribute to today's product. I'm happy to watch and do recaps on Survivor Series or do write blurbs for the 30 under 30. Like that's a lot of fun. Where my passion really lies with pro wrestling is the historical content. I
Mhm.
love like I think one of the greatest things that's been happening lately is the content on the WWE Vault YouTube channel.
Oh,
It
yeah,
has
it's
been,
awesome,
oh
isn't
my
it?
gosh, it's awesome. Like all the Survivor Series backstage footage that they just posted, that kind of stuff I could watch for hours. Like the whole Paul Bearer thing doing a promo and the Undertaker ribbing him with the skeleton, with the skull, and him getting upset. Like I could watch that stuff for hours. It's so funny. Like yeah, that's I love that. I love consuming that. I love like talking about that stuff. But yeah, man, like I don't know what else to say. Like I love being in the mix and dipping my toe and having like a corner. Like I don't know if it would ever be my primary focus ever again, but I love it. I love having it as even a small part of my career. That's a lot of fun for me because where else can I apply all this useless knowledge, Mark?
Well, you know what? I will have to have you on my Thursday night show that I do because we do games and stuff like that where I kinda get into wrestling history. So I have a feeling you
Please. I would love that.
oh my gosh.
Is there
Yeah,
trivia involved?
oh, yes, there is.
Oh, come on, Mark.
Oh,
Buddy,
yeah.
I'm
Yes, there
signing
is.
up. I'm in.
Okay,
I'm in.
done. Well, Arda, I wanna thank you for taking the time out to come on the Mark Hoke Show. I really do appreciate it, and always good to have a friend at ESPN and pro wrestling, having a great friend over there too. And make sure you guys check out the, 30 under 30 column on ESPN.com. It's terrific and, give you something to talk about. And Arda, where can everybody find you, by the way?
You can find me on social media at Arda on X and at Arda Ocal on Instagram. So when I win the trivia contest, do I get a title belt or a blazer? Like, what's the prize?
I'll send you a cookie.
Awesome. My name on it. Like, congratulations. It just
I
put
can
like a on in icing. Congratulations, you win.
I can
A
do that.
winner is
Okay.
you.
Yes.
Exactly.
Uh,
With
all
a
right,
picture of
Arda.
Starman.
Oh,
I
oh,
love
wow,
it.
Starman.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
Like
pulling out a
NES Pro Wrestling, a
Starman.
winner is you. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man, that's hilarious. Now you got me thinking of the NES, the old NES game.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
exactly.
remember that game. Yeah, oh my god. I broke some thumbs on that one.
King
But
Corn Karn and Fighter Hayabusa and whoever else. Starman had the best move though, like the most acrobatic. He'd like a standing drop kick moonsault.
yes,
Like
it
he'd
was
jump
very
in the
good.
air and then kick you in like perfect form with the backflip.
Oh,
Outstanding.
who was the one that was the, like, the creature from the Black Lagoon guy? I forgot his
Yeah,
name.
I got to
I
look this
hated
up
him.
now.
I hated him. That guy
He was
just tore
tough.
me to shreds all the time.
There was Fighter Hayabusa, Giant Panther. Was it King Slender maybe? Or the Amazon? The
It was
Amazon.
the Amazon. Yeah,
Yeah,
I hated that guy. You be on a rally and you just get your head bit in. It was
it's
terrible.
over. It's over.
Oh, wow. We could do this all day, I think,
We
but
could.
I know you've got a lot going on. So, Arda, thank you for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it, and we'll look forward to talking again in the future. This was a blast.
For sure, Mark. Thanks for having me.
You got it.